All you homeowners have unique needs. Some feel the need to leave up holiday decorations year-round. Others have the need to use their garage as practice space for their new metal band. And because each homeowner has unique needs, Geico helps you get the right coverage for your home and what's in it. That way, you get exactly what's right for you, even if your needs are unique. Get more with Geico.
When you visit Arizona, time is measured in moments, not minutes. Like the moment you see the Grand Canyon for the first time. Visit a new state of mind. Learn more at hereyouareaz.com.
Hi, I'm Zach Waters, and welcome to another episode of WTF-STOP Photo Talk, where I chat to photographers about their life and connection to the world through photography. Today's guest is American-born but British-based photographer Janine Wiedel, somebody I've wanted to talk to for a long time about her life on the road as a photographer. She was born in New York City, being based in the UK since the 1970s. She's had 2 solo exhibitions at the Photographers Gallery in the 70s. She's had books including Irish Tinkers, 76, Looking at Iran, 76, Vulcan's Forge, 79, Dover, A Port in the Storm, 91, and Faces with Voices, 92. About now, she is in the middle of her Kickstarter with Blue Coat Press with her new Vulcan Forge book. I was really pleased when she agreed to have a chat with me. When we talked about her wanderlust life, Canada, Ireland, Iran, and then you ended up in Guildford.
Yes, that was strange. Well, I started off, really, I wanted to be an architect originally, and I went to architecture school in Colorado.
And we talked about her days as a student to the legendary Ansel Adams.
That was amazing. I didn't take full advantage because at the time I was very much photographing the streets.
Yeah.
And of course, his work was almost the antithesis of mine.
And we talked about her time with the Irish Tinkers and Travellers in Ireland.
I always speak to people a lot. I would go in with the camera around my neck because it always was around my neck, but I wouldn't take photographs for quite a long time and until they were very aware and had said it was okay.
And we also chatted about how she feels invisible sometimes.
I'm totally invisible. And I'm shocked when I find I'm not, because when you're photographing, I think you, in a sense, are invisible.
So, first of all, Anne asked her what she was up to.
I seem to always be up to something and always working and scanning my older images for my photo library, which has always been my kind of source of way of living. So I'm always scanning the older work as well as the new work because I'm still photographing quite a bit at the moment. So that takes up a lot of time. I'm also always working on Cafe Royal book. Done about 15 with Craig, which is wonderful because it's a way of sort of pulling my work together and my projects together.
I think Homer Sykes and Daniel Meadows must be quaking in their boots now because they hold the world record for Cafe Royal books. They also were coming in there very quickly.
Exactly. I might beat them soon.
How many more do you think you've got?
At the moment, I have one on Eco Warriors, which will be coming out, in June or something. And then I'm working on 2 more. But I'm also hoping to do a much larger book with Blue Coat Press, which will be very exciting. That'll be more like a retrospective.
The retrospective, yeah.
And I'm also hoping that that book will work out on St. Agnes Place, which was a squat I photographed for several years.
Would there be a big exhibition?
Yes, that's one I've worked. I worked on it for probably about 4 years, interviewing people. It's a big project.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to place.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that will happen.
I mean, you've already had a big exhibition at the Photographers Gallery in the past, haven't you?
Yeah, I had a couple of big ones in the 70s. Actually, I had, I don't know if you knew, but the large installation one, which was up in the Photographers Gallery in 1979 on industry, has just gone up again last year in Birmingham, which was really exciting because it gave a chance for the workers who I photographed to come and their families to come and look at their lives 40-odd years ago.
Was that from the Forge series?
That was the West Indian. It was Vulcan's Forge.
Did you get the next generation of the families were coming in?
Yes, it was absolutely amazing.
Wow.
And from the Forge, the last day the exhibition was open, we had a sort of reunion, and there were 9 members from the Forge who came.
Wow.
And it was very exciting, yeah.
How did you get in touch with them?
Do you know, it just happens. I guess that's one good bit about the internet, because people either see the photographs somewhere and get hold of me.
Yeah.
It's amazing how that happens.
You're still very active, aren't you? I noticed in your blog that you are still covering protest, and that's a theme which goes back really to the early 60s with you, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, late 60s.
Sorry.
I'm old, but not that old.
That's a theme which goes back from you with the late 60s, isn't it?
Yes, it's complete. Very much is a thread through all my work.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Taxes was taxing. Now taxes is relaxing when you file for free.
I can file for free? TurboTax Free Edition. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free. I can file for free.
Now this is taxes. File for free with TurboTax Free Edition and get your maximum refund. No schedules except for Earned Income Tax Credit, Child Tax Credit, and Student Loan Interest. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free.
Even if it's protests that are direct protests, it's communities who are basically trying to keep their way of life. So there's a definite thread, and of which protest is a large part.
Was that by accident, do you think?
Inuit did that.
Was it something which was cooking away in the back of your head that you wanted to do, something which you could ask questions?
No, I don't think I never really plan ahead, or I'm not good at that. So things happen. But my interest, obviously, was always really about communities who are struggling. It was struggling to survive outside of the mainstream, Mike.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that people have the courage and motive to fight to retain that way of life.
Yeah.
Despite, authorities, society that's always trying to knock people down.
Yeah, because you early on, you photographed the Panthers, Black Panthers. And
yes, that's right. That was sort of my first real inspiration of going in that direction. That sort of pushed me into the direction.
Was that because you were thinking, there's questions here and I want to find out and investigate as a photographer?
Yes, I think everything, and I don't ever, at the time, I certainly didn't particularly think of myself as a photographer. I don't think I ever consciously said I want to be a photographer.
Interesting.
It sort of happened, and photography was my way of trying to express myself and to, I guess I always wanted to record what I saw and felt that it might be able to show people what was happening since they weren't seeing it directly. Does that make sense? Yes. So I never really set out to be a photographer.
Yeah.
In fact, my photography was very personal, and I wanted to, at the beginning, certainly keep that to myself and do any other work for learning a living.
Well, you've done well. You've made a good living out of it. You can see in your archive is somebody who's pursued personal work, pursued a sort of route of creating work that they wanted to focus on, but at the same time making a living. And there's a massive difference between making a living as a photographer and surviving to actually going out and shooting your own work as well to complement that. It's a circle. And not a lot of people get that in terms of being able to be a self-sufficient photographer in a way. And it's a very difficult thing to do.
Yes. I think my biggest breakthrough in that, which happened quite early on in I guess it would have been in the 70s, I decided that I wanted to photograph what I wanted, but I also had to earn a living. So I set myself up as a photo library. And I think that's what actually allowed me to photograph what I wanted, feed it into my library. Then it obviously wasn't digital. It was masses of prints that researchers would come and plow through.
Yeah.
So that was what allowed me to do that.
Yeah. And that's the secret of longevity as a photographer, isn't it? Just being able to have the resources to continue just in daily life, to give you that chance, the platform to go, now I can go and continue what I want to shoot and do.
Yes, and I think that's what the library gave me, because then that did quite well. I mean, as well, I was doing quite a bit of teaching, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And doing commissions, but I was never as good at commissions as I was at doing my own stuff.
Yeah. I mean, you've had some great teachers as well, haven't you? Ansel Adams, I sort of read.
Oh, well, that was, yes, in California. I did a workshop with him, really. In,
what was that like?
Part of San Francisco Art Institute through that. That was amazing. I didn't take full advantage because at the time I was very much photographing in the streets.
Yeah.
And of course, his work was almost the antithesis of mine.
Yeah.
Because everything was planned, everything was, you knew every zone of grey, and it would be every photograph was that way, whereas I was the opposite.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, a workshop I did with him was using Polaroids, which were then fairly new.
Yeah.
Which was kind of interesting. And again, very much sort of different from most of his work.
Do you look back at that period in that workshop, Ansel Adams? Do you take something from what you learned in that, achieved over as a photographer in the community?
Yes. I mean, I think he's obviously a fantastic, his images are a knockout. They're wonderful. So I think I did learn a lot. And I had the opportunity to go and see his darkroom, which was amazing. And I think the discipline he had I learned a lot from things like that. Yes, he had tremendous discipline.
Yeah, he's renowned for that, wasn't he?
Yes, and control, even though that isn't the direction I went.
Yeah.
At the time I was doing landscape, but not in that way.
Well, he was very established, though, at the time, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. Yeah, and it was a whole group.
You were just a youngster coming through.
Yes. Very established, and, it was a whole little group of them with Beaumont Newell and Nancy Newell, who are the photographic historians. I don't know if you know their books.
No.
Oh, they did the early history of photography books were all written by them.
Right, okay. You've had a bit of a wanderlust life, haven't you? You started in New York, Colorado, San Francisco, Canada, Ireland, Iran, and then you ended up in Guildford.
Yes, that was strange. Well, I started off, really, I wanted to be an architect originally, and I went to architecture school in Colorado. I grew up in New York, yes. And then I went to Colorado. There were 250 guys and about 3 women who they had taken on this special 5-year architecture course. And we were a bit treated like lepers. You would have lecture halls, and the 3 of us women would have seats between us before all the men were. And we were then encouraged very heavily to move into fine art. And they managed to move all of us out into the fine art department on the 2nd year. After that, I went to California, to San Francisco, and took some part-time courses it was painting and sculpture I was really doing. At that time, it was the days of Vietnam, when people were coming back with American flags on top of their coffins. And, there were really turbulent times. And I found myself going out and wandering and looking and observing in the streets rather than I didn't want to be stuck in a studio. So that's when really photography started to interest me, because it allowed me to wander and look at things and also capture them. So I had no idea, but it was a very personal journey, and I never thought of becoming a photographer. So what I did was I took every odd job I could find. Sometimes it would be waitressing. Sometimes it would be, I worked also in a photographic retouching studio. So I learned to retouch old people's wrinkles, including Reagan's, because he was then governor.
Yeah.
In California. So I was, but that was more Yes, it was a job I could get. It wasn't with the aim of particularly becoming a photographer. I wanted to earn the money.
You were surviving.
So
it's a bit of a big jump from New York to San Francisco, isn't it?
America's that way. It is a long way.
Yeah.
I'm very up for any adventure.
Who was your sort of inspiration then, photographically?
Photographically, I think one really important exhibition I had seen on one of my trips back east was the Cartier-Bresson exhibition at MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art.
Yeah.
That was sort of the first time I was really inspired because there were huge prints and then small prints. It was a change of scale. So it wasn't like a ploddy exhibition that you go around looking at everything the same size. So I think I found that really exciting.
It's interesting with Cartier-Bresson how you question sometimes why was he and how was he so influential as a photographer? And just talking to a lot of photographers over the years, whenever I go back and ask a photographer who inspired you, who was that person, 9 times out of 10, Cartier-Bresson's in there. And he really was an influential figure, wasn't he, in many ways to people, whether they knew him personally or they were just looking at his work like you in a gallery in New York. Well, I say gallery, I mean Museum of Modern Art. It's interesting.
Well, I think his work was, at the time, incredibly exciting. And I can't think of other photographers who had worked in that way at the time.
What made it exciting?
I think it was the, probably a thing called the decisive moment, but you got the feeling that he was walking in the streets, moving around, seeing things, clicking them, and there was a freshness. It was totally, It was unplanned.
Yeah.
Of course, yes, his visual was such that each image is very planned, but it was instinctive.
Yeah.
And I think that was it at the time.
Yeah.
Because you had the people, whether it was the West Coast people like Strand and Adams and etc. Well, I suppose, yes, and even the FSA photographers were different.
Yeah.
So I think he was very fresh at the time.
Yeah. So what was that moment in San Francisco where you realized photography was going to take you on the next journey?
I'm not sure it even happened there because in California I was photographing the Black Panthers, and I was also, my boyfriend at the time was very political and very involved in the Berkeley People's Park and riots. So I would spend a lot of time recording the park as it was being built. I don't know if you know about that, but it was the university, Berkeley, had bought up a very scrappy piece of land, and students then took it over and decided to make a park out of it for the community. So people would go every weekend and we would plant trees, dig, build playgrounds for children. And the community also donated lots of money and food for people. And then suddenly the university and Berkeley moved in, and it ended up into a full-scale riot with the National Guard being called in, thanks to Reagan, who was governor at the time, and thought it was a sort of a communist takeover, and he was going to squash it.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
I was photographing that. And then my boyfriend actually got sent to prison. He got shot during that with birdshot, and then sent off to a Texan jail.
Wow.
And so I kind of who was at a slight loose end, moved and got a job, oddly enough, photographing down in the Galapagos Islands, which was sort of a breakthrough because I thought, oh gosh, I never thought of myself as a photographer or working as a photographer.
How did the Galapagos Islands come about?
Oh, that was amazing. It was, oddly enough, a British ship, which was making an exploratory journey to the Galapagos for future, I suppose, future trips, taking tourists in. So it was one of the initial journeys into the Galapagos, which was fantastic. But again, that was kind of a landscape-based shoot. So that was the first time I started to realize that maybe I could earn a living as well as take what I wanted.
And then the Black Panthers as well.
Yes, but that was before that, really.
How did that come about?
That was while I was in California. So that I was doing out of pure curiosity, interest. It was obviously a really important time.
And the interest is still there 50 years later, isn't it? It's interesting.
Yes, very much so.
How that period really resonates now with a lot of the issues which were going on in the 60s.
It has never been solved. And, at that point, Martin Luther King had been killed. And they were tired of waiting for getting their rights and their freedom. And it was very much a separatist movement. And they set up schools and decided to take care of themselves and to defend themselves by taking up rifles.
So then you moved to London.
Yes, then I was sort of at a loose end, and a friend who had been working with Irish travelers there said to come over, asked me over to visit, and I got completely hooked. She gave me some contacts to go into some of the traveler camps. And yes, that my curiosity was completely, I wanted to know more about them. And then from there, I went to visit a friend in Guildford, with someone I had met, oddly enough, was an engineer on the crew in the Galapagos. A bit odd, obscure. And then...
So you've gone from San Francisco to the United Kingdom, and then did your journey with the Irish Tinkers start almost straight away?
No, I travelled from from the US to Ireland to visit a friend who had been working with the Irish Travellers. So that was my introduction and my first sort of interest in pursuing them and finding out more about the Irish Travellers.
What was the intrigue? Was that just a sort of option to go there? What was the intrigue about going to Ireland? Northern Ireland, I presume.
No. This was around Galway, Southern Ireland.
Right, okay. Sorry.
Southern Ireland. And it started just as visiting a friend, but then I got completely hooked when I met some of the Irish travellers and wanted to know more about them and their lifestyle and what they were up against. So when I then moved to England.
Yeah.
I didn't move. I traveled to... I don't make plans ahead. So it happened. I went and visited a friend in Guildford in England.
Yeah.
I guess the Guildford School of Photography, which was then called West Surrey College for Art and Design, was sort of down the road. And I just walked in and decided, really, I had never done studio work and I didn't know very much about the technique of photography. So I walked in and I think November and spoke to Walter Nuremberg, who was then head. He was a well-known industrial photographer, and just said, "Oh, I want to join the course," and I did. So I spent 3 years there, but spent my whole time going back to Ireland to visit the Irish travellers and to document them.
What were you trying to do there? What was the interest? What was the intrigue?
I don't know what. I don't think didn't have an end outcome. I just wanted to know more, and once you get to know one family, you I did easily get passed on to the other families, and it becomes more and more intriguing. So I kept going back to take photographs back to them and to revisit them. At the time I had an old minivan, if you remember those. And I set up curtains around the side so I would live in that, which was quite interesting. But you couldn't live in the camps with the travelers. You'd have to live up the road. Because even if a traveler married or got involved with a non-traveler, they would also be excluded from the camp.
So you didn't get any offers of marriage?
I didn't at that point. It would have been a very tough life.
What questions were they asking you?
I said it would have been a very tough life on the road.
What questions were they asking you? You've got this young American girl coming into their camps and their lives and their family, and I presume that they had their arms open for you and they took you in, but what questions were they asking you?
I think they probably sussed me out quite carefully. But I think that once one family or one part of the family, because they're very extended families, had kind of said you were okay, then they would pass you on to another family and they would already assume you had sort of been passed as being okay and not a threat. And I don't think I looked as if I was anything to do with the authorities or any threat to them. I think they probably thought this is just very odd. And why is she wanting to take photographs? I always speak to people a lot. I would go in with the camera around my neck, because it always was around my neck, but I wouldn't take photographs for quite a long time and until they were very aware and had said it was okay.
It's interesting how people view the photographer, isn't it? Yeah, I'm really fascinated with that because we see it as the photographer's side and we look at the community and we have that interest. But I love the thought process of thinking, how do they see us? We're just like this alien body they can't quite understand why. It's interesting.
Yes, I think it is. I think it's fascinating. And I think probably that's where being a woman is very different from being a man.
Yeah.
Because I think we're less threatening.
But you had this American accent, I presume.
Do I still? I don't know.
You've got a more of a sort of London-y accent now. I actually don't know. You've actually... It suits a bit Irish to me as well.
Yes, I think I've gone, but it's sort of into the middle of the Atlantic somewhere.
Yeah.
But yes, I was more American at that point. I'm sure I was
more of a New York accent, or
well, my accent probably also everything else about me.
Yeah.
You know, Americans are. I found that when I came over here, our whole way of behaving is different, and we tend to ask people rather quickly more about themselves,
right,
which I don't think English people do as much. Am I right?
I don't know, actually. You probably are.
You know, Americans are taught very early on, if you meet someone, you ask what they do. And I don't think English do that.
It's interesting you say that. Where I'm from, in the north of England, we never stop talking to each other.
You see, the north is probably very different.
Yeah, you get on a bus and you talk to people. You talk to the little old lady in the front of the seat. You talk to a bloke. You say hello to somebody you've never met in your life. This interaction. And when I went to London as a photographer for the first time, I'd come back up north after a month and I'd be like shell-shocked. I'd be on the tube in London. Nobody's talking to each other.
Yes.
And so I think the answer to that question, what you asked, I'm not sure. I think you're potentially right. And I think that a lot of people who might listen to this will see the same thing as well.
Yes.
You know, but I think as a photographer, I'm looking from the perspective of a photographer. I've always wanted to ask questions of the people in front of me, and I still do.
Right.
And I know you still do, you know. So it's an interesting debate, that one.
Yes.
I wouldn't say you're wrong, and I don't know if you're right.
Yeah. Yes, no, it is an interesting one, though, because maybe I was being a bit too forward too quickly.
No, that's not a bad thing to be. So you were shooting on what at the time of the Travellers?
With those, I think I was using, because it was mixed. I had an old Leica, which was my uncle's old Leica, which was a really early rangefinder. And then I had a separate light meter. You know, we had the Western light meters, which were old. That was probably my uncle's as well. And then I think my earliest camera was probably a Pentax. I think it was a Spotmatic.
Yes, I do. Is that the one that had the purpley casing.
Oh,
Had like a little sort of red-purple casing on it. I don't know the exact colour. Because I think I had one early on.
don't know if it did. I would have taken the case off. I don't think I...
No, you know the grip, the rubber grip around the camera.
Oh, the grip. I don't remember that. I remember it sort of being black, silver. But it had a funny light meter with a needle that would go...
Oh, yeah.
So,
Maybe mine just turned purple.
I think that was it.
Maybe mine just turned purple because there was always residue of fix
Probably.
bath or stop bath on it or something like
Those
that.
were the days. And when you think about it, of course, we had no idea. I had no idea what I was getting.
Nobody did back then.
We didn't. We would keep shooting.
You were always looking into a black box, weren't you? You put a camera in your front of
Gosh,
you.
did I get that? And then I was always uprating film because it was always bad light.
Oh, don't go there. Bulk rolling film. There used to be. I used to scream. You could hear screams in a dark room where I was trying to bulk roll film and I could just never do it. And it was like,
Yeah.
ah.
Well, I would do it very kind of, I'll give it a few more minutes. And you'll shake the tank a bit more. But also, I think because I had several films on the go, so you would have the uprated one, and then you would wind it in and count the number of frames, leaving the tag out. Then I put another film in that was a different speed, a normal speed maybe.
Yeah.
And you'd put that in, and then the light would go, and you'd take that out, wind it in, and reuse the old one, counting off 20 frames, covering the lens.
Yeah.
So it was quite tricky.
When digital came in, really ended in the 90s, where, you could actually buy a digital camera, which you could potentially use for a job. It was just like shooting transparency. It was so unforgiving
Yes.
at the beginning. And because I was a film photographer and a transparency photographer, we know that's film, but we had to learn about exposure very early on.
Yes.
So when digital came along, it was like the sun came out of the clouds and it was just so much easier because you could see your mistakes immediately.
Yes, it was phenomenal. And I think I switched rather late to it. I think I switched in about 2004, I think. Or 3. Well, anyway, early 2000s, I guess. And up until that, I kept on with my digital. And yes, I was taking. I mean, now when I look, I have a mix of old transparencies and then it switched to the film. And in fact, the old transparencies are very difficult to scan.
And also, in the early 2000s, when digital was coming through, neg film became really good.
Yes, the neg
that's the
film was
right word.
much better.
I used to say around the early 2000s, you can shoot in the dark with negative now. It was that good. It was such a relief to be able to use colour film or shoot colour and just shoot it with your eyes closed, basically.
Yes.
What lens were you using mainly in Ireland?
Oh, in Ireland, I would have had, I always loved just a 50, a normal standard lens was kind of my favorite because I felt I could walk in and walk out. And it was a nice one for close up without distorting. But I had wide angle. I wouldn't have really I very rarely use a telephoto.
Yeah.
I would use either a wide angle, but it would be probably 35 in old terms. Yeah. And then a standard lens was my kind of norm. Because I think you move in and you move out.
In and out, anonymously.
Yes, we're totally unknown and unseen. Which is another. I think I have always had the feeling that I'm totally invisible. And I'm shocked when I find I'm not. Because when you're photographing, I think you, in a sense, are invisible. Which isn't actually the case, probably.
And that's an interesting statement to make in that you were a woman photographer in the 60s and 70s. What was it like being a woman photographer in the 60s and 70s?
It was interesting.
And the 80s and 90s as well.
Yeah. And I'm still a woman photographer.
Yes.
I
think the world's changed a little bit, attitudes to women.
Yes. And now certainly there are many, many more women photographers than there were. When I was teaching, there were very few. And certainly when I went to Gifford School of Photography, I think there were only 2 women on the course. So yes, fewer women went into photography. But yes, it's hard to say because I've never been a man, so I don't know what that's like. I think it's much, perhaps, easier to get into communities and groups because you are less of a threat.
Yeah.
You're less likely to be suspected of being, sent by the authorities or whatever, or undercover police. So I think we can blend more easily, and also we're not taken very seriously.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
In terms of getting work as a photographer, did you have any obstacles in that area?
Gosh, that's a hard one to say. I mean, I think at the time I was working a lot for educational publishers. In that, in some ways, probably it may have been an advantage because working in schools, and those are the times when you would be sent in to photograph a school, but you could spend the day there basically being a fly on the wall and photographing everything. So that was quite a different thing from what would happen today, where everybody would have to give their permission and everything would be set up. So in that sense, working within schools, it was quite easy because I could blend and the kids wouldn't notice me after a while.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's all about aura or something like that, because you can walk into a room and make yourself visible, or you can walk into a room and make yourself basically invisible practically. And I think most male photographers tend to walk in with bravado and big cameras and everything else and are far more visible, maybe.
Good answer.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. The 70s was a pretty prolific period for you as a photographer, a big learning process, wasn't it? Take me from the Irish Tinkers to Iran, Vulcan Forge, and then to Dover, and anything in between.
Yes, the Irish Tinker Project was sort of the first long-term project that I had really worked on and was sort of obsessed with. And then from there, because of those images, etc., I got very much into educational publishers such as Penguin would commission me to do kind of long-term studies on things like depression or disruption in schools, and they would give me a sort of free rein I would find the locations of schools and whatever, and I would spend time there. So that was a time when also I was getting paid and commissioned to do something that actually I loved doing and was really interesting. Involved kind of researching and looking at things. From there, then, yes, in 70, I guess I had an exhibition, which was probably a breakthrough at the Photographers Gallery, of Irish traveller photographs, which then led to a book called Irish Tinkers, which came out in 76. It was also of Inuits. I had spent a summer living with an Inuit family in Baffin Island in the Arctic. So the Photographers Gallery had an exhibition of both of those parties. So that sort of, again, set things rolling. And then I was commissioned by an education publisher to do a book, to write and photograph a book on Iran. And that was, I think, that's 1977. Which was another total adventure and very interesting. Coming back to being a woman was quite difficult, being a woman.
In Iran?
Yes, very. Those were the days of the Shah.
Tell me about it. Talk me through some of your Iranian adventures.
That's a lengthy one. But I mean, basically, going there, I had to sign in with the Savak, who are the Shah's police force. They ended up following me everywhere I went, really, although I didn't always see them. And at the time, my sister was also a journalist working for the Kehan paper in Iran. So she was based in Tehran. And every evening we would get the savak, the police, sitting in the back garden, the backyard, more likely. We'd find all the cigarette butts. So then whenever I traveled, I knew I would be followed by them. And I remember one journey when I went down to Shiraz, and I had a driver, and we got into this really bad accident, because what would happen would be that they would, everybody did this, they would go into freewheeling whenever you went downhill. So the engine would be cut off and you would just sail down the hill. And a truck was coming towards us, which came right into us, and we rolled over. The driver was shrieking. I decided I wasn't about to die. No. And somehow I got rescued from that and taken by someone off to Shiraz, which was a bit odd. So I assume that was someone who had been following.
Wow.
Don't know. But I mean, it was a very odd experience. As a woman, I was perpetually, whenever I asked directions or anything, there was a certain pride in telling me the wrong answer. So it was very hard to do it, to do anything. So it was an experience.
What were you aiming to get out of the trip to Iran?
It was, I had to write this book. I had to do a book for, it was ANC Black and Lippincott in the States. They co-published it. But I had to, it was a book for children, well, for 12, 14-year-olds about Iran. So really, I had to cover an awful lot of ground and come back with pictures, both in black and white and color.
In color?
Yes, I had to do both, because the book was paginated so that you had a spread of black and white, you had a spread of color. And of course, beforehand, you didn't know which it was going to be.
Oh, God.
So it was all a bit of a nightmare.
Just even that's a nightmare. Never mind being in Iran.
Being there.
At that time, and being a lady, being followed.
Was quite difficult. But
a good experience.
It was fascinating, and it's an amazing country, And I got to go to Abadan, which I was put up by the Iranian oil company. So that was incredible. And there, of course, I got put up by the oil company in a very expensive hotel, which was like a shock.
Going back to that, shooting colour and black and white at the same time I remember that, people saying that. But how do you physically do that? You see a picture, you're going to decide, going back to what you said about Cartier-Bresson, the decisive moment.
Yes.
You see a picture, you shoot it. On the first camera you pick it up and it's colour, you've got an option. You can always, at some point later, you could make it into a black and white. But if you shoot it in black and white, you're never going to get the colour. And it's just weird concept to be able to shoot in colour and black and white, because you're going to get two totally different outcomes, aren't you?
Yes. And I think, you either see, my theory is you either are seeing in colour or you're seeing in black and white, because they're totally different. How you compose things, how you look at things is totally different. And it's
very easy now to do that.
Yeah, I was always in black and white I saw it in black and white. So I always felt the colour was a second string.
Very early on, Ian Berry, who didn't move over to digital straight away, watching him work very early on in the zeros. He's obviously a black and white photographer, right. But he started shooting very early on in colour film, because he then converted it to black and white, and a lot of his black and whites are actually colour.
Ah, I didn't realise that.
But even somebody like Salgado, when he moved over, he shoots in colour a lot of the time and converted to black and white.
It's interesting, because sometimes I've tried with a colour turning into black and white, and it's different, because I just think you're seeing in one or the other, because they are so different, aren't they?
Yeah.
On how you compose things is different.
Very much, very much. What colour were you shooting on in Iran?
Oh, do you know, I have absolutely no idea. Would it have been the Ektachrome, or what did we have? Kodachrome, Ektachrome?
Yeah.
Probably been, did we have Ektachrome then? I think so. I'd have to look on the transparencies and find out. I have no idea, but certainly to me, the colour was a second string. I had to do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
They blend into one that far back, yeah.
I have so much more leeway on black and white, because you can upgrade it and then sort of scratch it. And when you get to the darkroom, know which one you've upgraded, hopefully.
Yeah.
That was always a tricky bit. But yeah, so Iran was a real experience. And then the next sort of major project I did, which is still kind of ongoing, was the Vauquelin's Forge.
And I've got that book somewhere.
Oh, you do? Do you have the original?
We need to meet up South London at some point so you can sign that.
Okay, with pleasure. But because the original catalogue now has become quite rare. But Craig at Café Royal has done a box set. I don't know whether you have that of 6 of the individual industries into a box set, which is really nice because the original catalogue obviously was printed in 1979, so the quality isn't as good. And that was really from the exhibition at the Photographers Gallery. But yes, that was a 2-year commission from the West Midlands Arts to photograph the Midlands in any way I wanted to, which was absolutely fabulous. So I could decide whatever direction I wanted to do it in. I had a year, which actually I spent 2 years on photographing what I wanted.
Yeah.
That one I based on industries because that's what the West Midlands was originally known for. So it took me into the coal mines and the steel mills and the forges. And I mean, that was great. And I lived in, I converted a Volkswagen van so I could live in that.
Well, you were floating around the Midlands in a...
Yes, which was fantastic
Panther.
most of the time. Very hard sometimes to find somewhere to park, but it was...
That's the life.
It was good. And I could develop film in it.
What else I was going to ask you, going back to the Irish project, Iran and the Forge, and then Dover, you were shooting, I presume, with bags of film in your bag. You must have had a lot of film. Where did you start printing all of this stuff up in respect to the projects you're working on? So when you were shooting the Irish, you went back and you, with a few bags of film, and then you'd process them at home, I presume?
You'd have no idea what you got. So it would sometimes be, a few weeks before I went back and processed everything to find out what I did get. Which is an odd concept now that we're so used to looking, and making sure we got it. So yes, I usually had no idea what I had got.
Where were you developing it all then? At home?
Yes, in London when I was based here. But yeah, as I say, I could actually develop some of the film in the van, which was always my idea with the van because I had blackout curtains.
Yeah. But looking back at that, it's probably the worst thing you could see with the
Absolutely
dust.
terrible. But, I've had all sorts of makeshift dark rooms, so I was pretty good at that. In California, I had a small cupboard, and I would have, just shelves running up it. So I would have the developer quite high up, and then I'd move it down a shelf into the water bath, and then down into the fix, and then carry it into the shower or the bath to be washed. Well...
We were very industrious 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I remember going to friends who were photographers and had darkrooms in the most incredible, strange places.
Yes.
It was amazing how industrious we were in terms of making darkrooms. You could always tell somebody had a darkroom in the house because you could just smell stop bath everywhere.
Oh, it was awful. And our fingers would smell of fix. And I remember it got hard because I was quite bad at when I had the dark rooms. I would sort of wallow in with, you'd rub the developer to bring up bits. I don't know if you did that, but you'd bring up the highlights and whatever by rubbing the fix a bit harder and warming it.
Oh, warming it, of course we did.
Yes, and you would warm it.
Yes. That after you've done 3 walls, you'd be like measuring it. Then after the 4th, 5th wall, you're just like, yeah, I know how hard it is. But just keep it going, I remember many years ago walking into a photographer called Leo Reagan, who did something on Garda in Ireland. He's a fantastic, he still is a photographer, filmmaker now. But I remember early on in my London time when I first moved, I went into Leo's apartment in London. Mm-hmm. And in the living room of this very nice house, there was just this construction of black bin bags. It was like a walk-in darkroom in the middle of his living room.
Yes.
He might question that, but what I can remember was just this amazing construction, and I thought, wow.
Yeah.
He just made this makeshift darkroom in his living room. It was just wonderful.
Yes.
I wasn't the neighbour to my landlady, would have went nuts if I'd have gone back and done that.
Wow.
But we're very industrious, weren't we? Early on when it was all film. So the Vulcan Forge, and then you ended up doing the Dover Docks, and then we're moving into the 80s, I presume.
Yes, well, the Dover again was actually a commission for a year, which is, just wonderful, these open commissions. I could spend a year documenting Dover. The idea was it was before the Channel Tunnel came in. So this would have been early 90s, 89, something like that. And that again, it was incredibly challenging because you would wander around. I would wander around Dover and you couldn't see anybody. You couldn't find anybody. It wasn't the most visual of places. So yes, I ended up finally finding things like older people's dance classes and, where they're doing ballroom dancing. Well, all sorts of odd things you would find, but you'd have to walk into places to find anybody. You just sort of have to, again, knock on doors. And then I also went onto the ferries. So I finally got permission to do that, which was interesting because they gave me fairly free rein to wander around in the workings of it. So yes, that was a challenging one, Dover.
So then the 80s, 90s, you were still continuing with your activist work, I guess. Is activist work the right way to put it?
Yes, also out of all this, I've always photographed protests in its many ways. And then I suppose after that, I also spent a year doing a project on Sudbury.
Yeah.
The town there. And then I'd also spent time down, which was, again, totally self-motivated, the Eco Warriors in Greenham Common. So I spent quite a lot of time documenting that. 84, I think it was.
I remember seeing that project early on.
Yes, you may have.
In the press. Was it The Guardian or The Independent? I think I saw the Greenham Common stuff.
Could have been. It may have been. Yeah, I can't quite remember where, but I think it probably was, and that may have been
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Offshoot of the book Craig did.
Who have you associated with through this time then, in terms of agent-wise? Have you had an agent? Have you worked through a picture library? What have you done?
No, well, as I think I said before, what I early on did was set myself up as a photo library, which has been my main way of supporting myself. So this must have been way back in the 70s I made that decision. And that obviously was photo library I have filing cabinets stocked with photographs of every sort, and researchers would come and research and use them mainly for books, magazines, everything. So that was really my way of earning a living, and that has proceeded now.
You're still independent.
So I'm independent. I mean, I have had stuff with Alamy and Getty for a while and Photofusion, but really the libraries now have undercut photography in general tremendously.
It has, but I think they've got us over a barrel. There was
It's dreadful. I mean, it's insulting, the prices that they're using the images for. Obviously, my own library, I can ask for slightly larger fees, but people often just go to the big ones or have contracts with them and automatically buy good enough images for a very cheap price.
Yes, I saw an interesting conversation a couple of days ago with Brian Harris and a couple of other photographers on a closed press photographers group. And what they were talking about is what you've got is having your own picture library set up. There's a few people moving away from Alamy, and that's not what Brian Harris was talking about. What he was talking about was, if I use this provider to host my library, will it pay? Because how am I going to attract the attention of picture buyers to my website?
Absolutely, yeah.
So with Alamy, people know there's pictures there, so they'll come in and put a keyword in. For somebody like David Hoffman, I can understand why he has his own independent lab, because he's very specialist. But with, say, Brian Harris, he's a newspaper editorial photographer, so he is specialist, but on a wide variety of work. So would it pay to have his work in his specific stock lab?
Probably not.
And that's the juggle. And my view is, as well as listening to what you're saying, I totally agree and sympathise with you that you've got this independent library and you've been literally hung out to dry a little bit with prices and things like that. Well, my view is have that library independently, but what's the harm in putting them on Alamy as well?
No, there isn't a harm. You can do that.
Yeah.
But certainly, well, you can, but you see, I find that luckily a lot of my work, which comes through, the requests that come through to my own library are sort of more specific. They might be the industry, they might be Irish travellers, they might be Black Panthers. So those are quite, they're unusual topics.
Yes.
And Google, you have to get Google to pick up on them.
Yeah.
Go to Google and put in Black Panthers, America, whatever. And if you don't come up, they're not going to come to your library. But if you had them on Alamy, they might get them for nothing there.
Of course.
So I'm quite careful that my more specialist and more important work I don't have up there.
Yeah. And I think if you can overcome that bridge of making your work accessible to buyers, and that just comes with promotion and being clever about it. But that takes time. It's hard work. It's not easy.
I mean, I've been working for probably since, 2000 and when did we get the digital and start scanning? But I now have about 30,000 pictures that are keyworded, scanned, et cetera, and up online. But I mean, this has been full-time keywording, which is deadly boring.
Oh, don't go there. Don't talk about keywords.
Oh, it's just incredible. And the scanning as well. It's boring. It's quite exciting looking through and deciding what you're going to scan, but it's time consuming.
Do you get to that point with pictures? You get excited that you scanned them and you're going to put them on the system. And then you look at your keyword system and you go, I'm going to have a cup of tea.
Oh, it's deadly. Absolutely deadly.
It's just exhausting even thinking about keywords. It's horrid. It's a horrid process.
Yes, it is. And of course, nothing's any good unless you do it.
And then Alamy, what they did was, that where you input the keywords in the information and it's like, it's on an orange, that it's low availability.
Oh, that's terrible.
And then you have to keep adding keywords till it hits green. Yeah. And then it's going to have high visibility in amongst 5 million images. So it's not going to be.
No.
And then next week you get a sale. And I look at the sale and it's $20.
Exactly.
And it's a low visibility. There's 6 keywords to it. And I'm thinking, I've just spent a week putting 100 keywords to 1,500 images. Oh, it drives me bonkers.
But of course, if you try to make it go green, what you have to do is put a word that has nothing to do with the image.
Yes.
It isn't taking the image into account. It's taking the word.
Have you ever tried putting swear words in? I used to put swear words in just for the fun of it.
Yeah, and it probably went green.
I've just put swear words in what I think just to get past the green.
Yeah.
I won't mention them out here, just kids listen.
Really, it's insulting the way they're selling stuff. It's wrong because photographers won't be able to survive that way. Certainly.
Yeah, there's some interesting discussions about that. And Alamy taking the DAX now. I was forced in to sign the contract for the DAX, never realising I could never get out of that contract.
Oh, mistake, yes.
And then they wanted exclusive rights to your imagery. So if you signed over and said, my images are only on your site, you'd get a 60-40 split your way. And then they changed if you don't sell over a certain such amount, you go to 50-50. So I've looked at mine and I don't make that much.
Right.
And I'm thinking because I don't get that threshold of sales, they're going to move me to 50-50.
Yes.
So I emailed them and I said, if I'm on 50-50, why have you got me on exclusive for 60-40? And I said, can you take me off the exclusive?
Right.
And I said, yeah, well, you can do that. And I said, no, you can do my 12,000 images. You can just press a button and take it all off. They said, yeah, okay, we'll do that.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, man, it was a confusing period.
Yes.
Over the last 18 months of what they were actually doing.
Yes.
Mind you,
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Saying that Alamy the best out of a bad bunch.
Well, they are, and I certainly earned an incredibly good living off them. In when I put stuff in from the very beginning,
Yeah,
and it was making a lot of money.
it used to, didn't it?
And just suddenly, if you look at their graph, it just drops because their revenue. They were selling stuff for decent prices.
Have you looked at that graph and noticed from about 2009? Boom.
Yeah.
You remember the recession? Remember that big recession in 2008?
Yes, drop, but they dropped their prices and this, that, and the other, isn't it?
Yeah. 2009 was one of my most lucrative periods. I had lost loads of work because nobody had any money. Then after that, it's a downward slope. Sales have gone up, but the sort of revenue slope has dropped right down. You're still very busy as an independent photographer.
I'm very busy.
You're covering a lot of protests, aren't you? You're sort of revisiting some of the Iranian issues. And if you go on your blog, it's a sort of stream of you, this American female photographer, still in the face of protests and still in the face of things going on in the world. And what I did notice is that you were at the jungle camp in Calais a few years ago. And I think I remember seeing that in the press. What was that like?
It was really, that was an amazing project. I actually went in with a fellow photographer, Jackie Chapman, also a woman. Beforehand, people said, "Oh, you can't go in there on your own. You certainly can't go in, as a woman, etc." But we just then we split up and took whatever photographs we were taking, and it was had no problem at all.
The images do look very warm in terms of your relationship with the subjects and the environment. They don't look intimidating.
Yeah, exactly. And, people were incredibly friendly. It was so sad because it was really us covering it before it closed, right before it closed down for that year. At least it provided far more help for people. It provided a community. They had shops. They had, lots of charities close, etc. And it was really like a town, a village. And the destruction of it was absolutely terrible because then it scattered people around. And now what's happening is people are just continually being uprooted from where they set up a camp or a tent and moved on. So, yes, it was an amazing experience.
What made you and Jackie go?
Curiosity, wanting to go, wanting to find out what it was really like, because there were all sorts of dreadful stories about it and, how people would go in and they'd get robbed and their cameras would get taken or whatever, which was very far from the truth.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you only live about 100 miles from it.
Exactly. It is something straight across, which is why the exhibition finally went up quite a lot of different places and into schools. Because I think, and kids were just amazed at something that was that close to where they were. And they go to the loo. How do they, really curious on how people lived like that. It's really important that what actually shows, those shots about how people are actually living, how they're getting their water, their food, their whatever. And that's just across the channel, isn't it?
It's a very brave thing to do in terms of just doing it, but it's what photographers do, isn't it?
Well, it's what we're about. We have to, see what is happening in the world firsthand, and which I think is why I really photograph, because it's the thing of being able to show people what you've experienced and what they haven't been able to see or haven't seen.
Was it that same intrigue with the Rastafarian community as well, which you documented in London?
Yes, well, I got involved that. I spent quite a few years following the St. Agnes squat, which was a street that had been the longest running street that has been squatted in London. And it was up for demolition once again. And part of that was the Rastafarian headquarters. So I got involved with the Rastafarian community through that and then followed them. But yes, it's all, life leads on to different things.
What's it leading on to now then?
Oh, I don't know. I don't plan ahead. No, but I always have threads and I have stories underlying my work, the same thing always in mind.
Well, without giving any big secrets away, is there still something you really haven't done yet?
Oh, yes, there's lots I haven't done.
Come on, tell me something.
No, I don't have at the moment, I'm really kind of assessing to a large extent the stuff I have, because if I don't take care of my archive, no one will.
What's going to happen to that in later life?
Well, that's what I have to start thinking about. I realize I'm not quite as young as I was, and one has to start thinking, how do you preserve it? Obviously, by doing books and pulling work together, that's incredibly important. But then there's also the launching. I mean, I have rooms full of prints and book dummies that I put together, because every project I always put several book dummies together of.
Can I come and have a look at them one day? I'd love to look at all of them.
Yeah. Actually, Martin Barth came and had a look and has purchased several of my older book dummies, which is great.
Of course he did.
And
he knows what he's doing, that man.
Well, it's wonderful because it is, it's preserving. And I don't know about you, but we were doing book dummies where we would put, paste original,
of course, yes,
early prints into books, and yeah.
He's collecting dummies.
Yes, I think that.
I've noticed that. There'll be a dummy exhibition soon, I think.
Yes. But I mean, it's great because what do we do? And we probably have, I have loads of, well, not loads, but a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know about you, but I was always putting things together into stories because that's what I'm kind of about.
The Book of Dummies. You haven't told me what's next then.
There is a lot.
Apart from project-wise, what's next? Come on, spill the beans, give me something.
It'll probably, you have to wait and see, you see.
I know I'm messing with you. But you definitely got another big documentary project there in your head.
I'm a little bit wavering on the cusp of several different ones, but they all interlink, really.
Wow.
So, yes. But I mean,
if any find your way down near me, give us a shout and we'll have a coffee.
Yes.
I mean, you're used to coming to Dover, aren't you?
Yes. Oh, yes, of course, you're right near there. And I am thinking, yeah. Yes, one thing I am doing.
Don't go on, tell you, you nearly slipped there.
Yeah, I nearly slipped. But one thing I am doing, which I can kind of, it's a sort of, it isn't really a sideline, but it's something I'm very interested in following up on the, what has happened to the workers who I photographed in the 70s.
Wow.
And what their lives, how their lives have gone, because I've reconnected with quite a few of them. I'd like to document them, which is kind of a follow-up.
Nice.
Project. And I have an exhibition coming up in Stoke-on-Trent in somewhere around June of the pottery photographs. And that again, my aim is to get a lot of the families of the people who are working there and the people themselves, both alive, and do a sort of follow-up on that.
That sounds fascinating.
So I think that's quite a big project, and it'll be interesting.
Are you going to find these people through the local newspapers and stuff like that, or how are you going to go about it? And obviously the internet.
Yes, well, I mean, actually, it was quite useful because when I had the exhibition in Birmingham last year, BBC did quite a good, the local BBC in Stoke and in Birmingham did quite a good program where they asked for people to come forward if they recognized any of the people in the photographs.
Yeah. You could also just quick, simple Facebook page as well. With,
yes, it can happen.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I'm on a Facebook page, a mining one, which a lot of the people are turning up there.
How interesting. That's really interesting.
So, yes, that's all fascinating. What happened? Because the 70s, of course, where people were losing their jobs in mines and in the steel mills. So their lives transformed in a huge way there. And, what happened to them? Where did they go? Yeah.
Really good.
So that's one link of my future projects. So, I mean, there's endless stuff to do, isn't there?
And to get the world record of Cafe World books as well.
pockets. Oh, yes, I have to get those out and beat Homer.
So you, Homer, and Daniel Meadows have around 40 between you. That is ridiculously good. And what are you scanning on then? What's your secret weapon?
I'd say it's the Nikon 5000, I think, which now is quite old, I guess.
Is that the medium format as one?
No. It's only 35 mil.
What name is it? 4000.
Nikon, I have it here. Coolscan.
4000.
It's called a super cool scan.
Yeah, you've got the 4000 right at the bottom.
Now it's for.
Is it grey?
It's grey.
Because I'm looking at mine now.
I think it's 4000. Is that what you use?
I'm asking you what it is, and I'm looking at mine right this second. What I'll say now is Janine's trying to show me in the video. I can see her, but you can't see it because you're on the podcast.
Of course, you can see me trying to look over at my scanner, which is...
I'm just saying that for the people on the podcast who can't see it, because she's trying to pick it up and show me. Janine, it's been a pleasure. It's been lovely. I've wanted to sort of find out more about you for a long time, and I loved seeing all your work being published on Cafe Royals. It must be great looking at it, thinking, wow, it's another chapter in my life here as a photographer. And I think Craig's done an amazing job there. And Craig Atkinson will be here, I think, at some point.
Yeah, well, no, Craig has been fantastic, and I think his books are great. And for me, it's been wonderful because I've been able to pull together the various stories that I've tried in the past and, have been sitting around. So it's been wonderful.
And for you to look back at somebody reinventing, changing the narratives of your past life, in a sense, it must be really fantastic. And that's somebody who hasn't got a Cafe Royal book. So we're not going to that. It's been wonderful. And yes, it's been fantastic. And I'd love to keep in touch with you and keep me up to date with anything you're doing. And give me a shout if you want to come do another little session. And
I will.
We'll do something. But it's been wonderful. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you. All the best.
Okay. Same to you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.